Chapter 1, Evil Monarch Jun Xie. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 001, Evil Monarch Jun Xie. Regular chapter. Jun Xie suddenly woke up. His right hand instinctively slapped the ground, intending to jump up even before his eyes were open. This was a dangerous place where life and death was but a hair's breadth away. He must leave immediately. This was the first thought that came to his mind upon waking up, a state of mind that has become part of his instincts as an excellent assassin. As his body began to rise into the air, suddenly his arm felt weak and was no longer able to support the weight of his body. Pang! He fell back down to the ground. Jun Xie fell into a state of extreme shock for a moment. What is going on? He then realized that his body was actually lying on a soft bed. Observing his surroundings, he found himself within a magnificently decorated room. However, with the exception of a set of square table, the room was empty. The only other item in the room was the giant bed that he fell onto. This giant bed was truly enormous, as it could support at least 7 or 8 people on it without the feeling of being cramped for space. What happened? Shouldn't I be in the middle of an intense gunfight? How did I end up in bed? Jun Xie's mind ran back to his memories before he went to bed, or more precisely, the last memories he could recall in his past life. Jun Xie was a killer by profession, a particularly outstanding gold-ranked assassin. Ever since his debut 5 years ago, there was no place he could not infiltrate, and his rate of success was 100%. It was something none of his predecessors could accomplish. Thus, he became the #1 assassin in the rankings list of assassins. At the same time, the name Evil Monarch rose to the first spot of the underworld's top-ranked experts. In addition, he also occupied the honorable #1 spot for bounty offered for his head. Indeed, his bounty was #1 amongst the world's bounty ranking for a good 3 years. That was not to say that no one was willing to take on this request, rather there was no one who was capable to taking it. No one possesses the capacity to go toe-to-toe against this near-legendary assassin, much less kill him. Once an innumerable number of first-rate assassins daringly took on the job, but the only reward they obtained was death while the Evil Monarch lived. A wealthy person from country Y once offered a shocking reward of $100 million to buy the life of the Evil Monarch. The ones who accepted this task were 2 assassins who were equally infamous as Evil Monarch, the pinnacle existence of assassins. They died 3 days later. Ever since then, no one was willing to take up the suicide mission. Even after the reward was increased numerous times, still no one was willing to step up. No matter how wonderful money may be, what was the point if you are dead? Only the living can get to enjoy money after all. The name Evil Monarch, on the other hand, became a taboo amongst the underworld's bounty list. The name Evil Monarch became a symbol of fear for the underworld figures in each country. There may be many who knew of the existence of this Evil Monarch, but none who knew the appearance of this king of assassins. What kind of person is he or she? What kind of character is this Evil Monarch? Jun Xie's character is true to his name. To sum it in one word: evil. 2 words: bloody evil. 3 words: God-damned evil. TL. Jun Xie's title of Evil Monarch Jun Xie is literally Xie Juan Juan Xie in Chinese pinyin. Xie means evil/heretical/demonical, while Juan means monarch/ruler/lord. He would always act alone, unwilling to work together with anyone. Needless to say, he has no friends. When accepting missions, he would be extremely fussy not only towards his clients but also towards the target. Should a client he found detestable offer him an enormous reward to kill a defenseless beggar, he would reject without any hesitation whatsoever. However, when he saw someone who deserved to die, he will voluntarily step up to assassinate said person. After which he will go find the said person's enemies and request remuneration from them. No was not an option. These hapless folks were often people with no history of hiring him, some have never even heard of him before. It was said. He once killed a human trafficker, but was unable to find any victims party. Seeing no other solutions, he switched his target towards a little girl who was abducted and extorted a dime from her. A dime. He passionately stated. I will never have any part in a business without any rewards, absolutely no exceptions will be made. His character and way of conduct leaves his master and division members who understood him speechless. It was said. He once cleared away the toilet papers in a toilet before his master went in to defecate. After the deed was done, the master realized the problem at hand and requested his aide to bring toilet papers. He took this opportunity to extort $500,000 in labor fees from his own master. His master gave in. As for the reason, that day, he called up all of his division's senior sisters to the toilet entrance and even invited several beauties to join in. However, he fervently believed that his biggest weakness was that he was too much of a loving person. Considering his identity as a pinnacle-level assassin with blood-soaked hands, this statement made countless people puke. His claim was not exactly baseless. When within his home country, he detested seeing the rich oppress the poor, especially the officials' oppressive behavior towards the common people. When in foreign countries, he detested seeing his own people oppressed. His patriotic character has stirred no small number of frightful disasters. Even with such a character, many clients would still rush to line up for his services. Reason. He possessed superior marksmanship, eyesight and immeasurable martial arts prowess. His cultivation in both fistfights and sword fights are exceptional. However, the biggest reason remains that his rate of success is 100%. This achievement was truly unprecedented. He was the ultimate assassin in the assassin realm. He was also the only one amongst the peak-level assassins with an unblemished record. However, this gold-ranked assassin was fundamentally a typical hot-headed youth. His last mission was another volunteer job. He heard that Country M's secret organization secretly unearthed a priceless treasure from the Kunlun Mountains of Country Z. They then secretly smuggled the treasure home before Country Z found out about it. As befitting a hot-headed youth, Jun Xie exploded in fury. In these peaceful times, how can a national treasure be allowed to fall into the hands of foreign Country M? Jun Xie single-handedly massacred his way towards the treasure, proudly facing off against nearly 100 Secret Service agents of Country M. He employed sneak attacks, traps and his combat skills to kill over 70 agents before finally laying hands on the treasure. At that moment, the Secret Service agent's courage had been shattered to pieces. If Jun Xie wished to, he could easily waltz out of there. Of that matter, Jun Xie had absolute confidence. However, the moment his hands went in contact with the treasure, a palm-sized exquisite pagoda, an unexpected supernatural incident occurred. At that critical moment, his entire body became paralyzed. Forget trying to move his body, he could not even blink. He did not notice the blood from one of his wounds gushing into the small pagoda, the delicate, exquisite and heretical-looking small pagoda. His last memories were that of no less than 50 pieces of mini grenades flying straight towards him, accompanied by over 20 firearms shooting at him. While he still has the skill and strength to wipe out these men in one fell swoop, he could only watch in sorrow, as his body would not move anymore. This feeling was truly infuriating. I never imagined that I would actually fall today in such an absurd manner. Nonetheless, I've lived a good life. Those corrupt officials, local tyrants and bullies that have died by my hands number at least over 1,000. My life was worth it. Others would smile as they enter the 9 springs, while I smile as I enter the depths of hell. I have had a spectacular and grand life. I have no regrets. Although I killed many people, they are all scum who deserved it. If it is just, why fear anything? Even if this act would drag me down to hell, so what? Kill. 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 Exterminate the dirty scums. Clean up every criminal. Even if the world is to condemn me as a murderer, so what? In this world, is there any other who can live as I did? What a delightfully unrestrained life. Ha ha ha. At his point, Jun Xie couldn't help but let out a loud laughter. Young master, you. Are you all right? A timid voice came out from beside him, seemingly terrified by his actions. The voice holds a hint of someone who's about to cry. A cold little hand was placed onto his forehead. Young master. This is not a dream. This is not hell either. Jun Xie awakened, promptly opening his eyes. Then suddenly a set of unfamiliar memories rushed up from his heart. Memories and information then surged into his mind. Jun Xie felt as though he was struck by lightning. He was now inside someone else's body. Or did he already reincarnated? But how could he still vividly remember his past life? Could it be I did not drink old Lady Meng's soup? Or did I actually end up in someone else's body? TL. Old Lady Meng's soup is the soup you drink before you get to reincarnate so that you forget about your past life. Did I transmigrate to another body? Or is this a bodily rebirth? Jun Xie stared coldly for a long time without any movement, and yet he still could not understand head or tails of what happened. When the little hand was moving about before his eyes, Jun Xie suddenly laughed madly. Son of a bitch. Good deeds really do fetch a good reward. For me to survive, I would never have expected such a good thing to happen. It appears that the great me must have accumulated no small merits in my past life, perhaps even immeasurable amounts of merits. Wahahaha. Hearing his sudden shouts, the roughly 10-year-old girl beside him trembled in fear and ran to hide in a corner. Her big pretty eyes blinked in confusion and fear as she stared at the nightmarish young master, and her body quaked. Her face was pale, looking almost similar to a frightened quail. Another scream suddenly resounded. This scream sounded wretched, but it was shouted by Jun Xie himself. This was because his voice was found to be of a high pitch, akin to a girl's. Could it be? That part of me is gone. No. Ignoring the fact that there was a little girl right in front of him, Jun Xie's immediate reaction was to grab his crotch. When he finally found that familiar part of his body, Jun Xie breathed a sigh of relief. Heavens truly did not mistreat me, I can still have children. That really scared me though, I thought I transmigrated into a girl's body. Jun Xie wiped away the cold sweat. After a while, the Jun Xie began to inspect his new body. Stagnant meridians, atrophied muscles, joint stiffness. What kind of person is this? His body is too fragile. Truly a crappy one. Jun Xie secretly whispered, but it does not matter. As long as the meridians are not destroyed, 3 to 7 years is all it will take for the great me to stand at the top again. After making up his mind, Jun Xie realized something. He was currently in a completely different world. No matter how he looked at it, this does not seem like the earth he was familiar with. He was currently alone in this world, he neither understands anything nor does he know anything. What were the rules of this world? What was this world? After putting all these factors into consideration, even a cold-blooded assassin of Jun Xie's caliber could not help but feel frustrated. Observing the antique-looking furnishing and bedding and the clothes on his body that was completely different from those from his time, his joy of not dying began to subside. In its place, a feeling of confusion welled up. It seems like it's true. I've been granted a second chance. This should have been a very exciting prospect for anyone, but a sudden feeling of innumerable loss and pain welled up from within his heart. It was a subtle feeling with no antecedent, causing his nose to feel sour, his eyes to turn watery, his heart to suffocate. Jun Xie's mouth turned into a self-deprecating one as he began crying for the first time in his life. Giving up on my homeland and planet is hard. I thought I could be free and easy. Originally I thought I could easily let it go, that was my belief at my last moments. And yet when everything became real, I suddenly found that I cannot let go, I really cannot let go. I originally thought that I had not a care in the world, but now I suddenly realized that the things I care about are so numerous I can barely count them. The most important part is that in this strange land, I cannot find my own sense of belonging. A sense of belonging. My soul has always been an outsider. Jun Xie closed his eyes as he gently inclined his head to the side. When no one could see, a tear silently fell down. This was the first tear of a man from two worlds. Do not belittle men who cries, everyone has a time where they have to endure sadness. Staring into the bronze mirror, he saw a young and somewhat childish-looking face. His face appeared slightly thin with thin lips, long eyebrows slanting upwards towards the temple, and a set of fine eyes gave off a sharp feeling. Jun Xie laughed bitterly and mumbled. I have to say, this kid's got some good looks, quite the handsome one, but he looks a bit too much of a flower boy, and his voice is too much like a sissy's. Recalling his past life, his appearance was simply impressive and full of killing vigor. Even though his look was not exactly the popular type, his eyes were a bit small, a bit thin, his nose was also a point lower. While his overall appearance seems rather average, at least he was a standard male. Even though there are some real men amongst these flower boys, he personally looks down on them. How could he have expected he would end up transmigrating into the body of a flower boy? Not to mention this was quite the handsome flower boy. Are you the one who brought me over, mate? His right hand gently stroked his left wrist where a very small pagoda pattern was visible. The pagoda pattern looked similar to a tattoo. On Jun Xie's face was etched a trace of pride. Even when I've ended up transmigrating, I still managed to keep this item safe instead of letting it fall into the hands of foreigners. The pagoda-shaped pattern was none other than the exquisite pagoda that Jun Xie traded his life for. Even though it has transformed into a small tattoo on his hand, Jun Xie can confidently say that this was the pagoda in question. He was unable to explain how he knew of this, only that his heart was telling him so, a real and yet mysterious feeling. Seeing the one thing that brings him a sense of comfort, stemming from his past life, Jun Xie's mind rolled about in turmoil. He was unable to ascertain what kind of feeling is this. Even so, he maintained a calm and collected disposition, not showing anything on his face. It was still an indifferent atmosphere. Quiet. While he was gently stroking the small tower pattern, it suddenly emitted a burst of foggy yellow light, causing Jun Xie to feel lightheaded. He sensed that something seemed to have entered his mind, following which the pattern on his hand disappeared. Strange. Shaking his head, Jun Xie felt amazed. This toy really was strange. It started as a small palm-sized tower, transforming into a tattoo on his hand, and then it miraculously disappeared. Could this stuff actually be a legendary treasure? Young master, the old master is asking for you. Just as Jun Xie was about to investigate what it was he sensed in his mind earlier, a voice suddenly came out. Asking for me. Jun Xie raised his eyebrows. Why? What qualifications does this old geezer have to command me to go meet him? Does he think I'm his grandson or something? Before he could utter those words, he swallowed them. Thinking about it, that old geezer really was his grandfather, or at least his current body's grandfather. This. I do not know. The little girl looked at him with a terrified expression before lowering her head. Her long eyelashes blinked in panic. Her legs are positioned one before the other, her body slightly tilted. She looked as if she was ready to make a run for it. TL. Jun Xie's title of Evil Monarch came from, or Xie Juan. Here, I translated Xie as evil and Juan as monarch. However, in Chinese, Xie can also mean heretical or demonical. As some of you may have noticed, Jun Xie is not evil, nope, he is simply evil, heretical and demonical all rolled up into one. As for why I chose Evil Monarch instead of Heretical Monarch for the novel title. Would you say that a person who cleared away all the toilet paper in the toilet that his master was using and then extorts $500,000 from his own master is not evil? That's goddamned F*** King Evil. Chapter 2, June Moxie. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 002 June Moxie. Regular chapter. June Moxie, currently 16 years old, he is the only descendant of the younger generation of the June clan of Tianxiang Kingdom, an idle, indolent, useless freeloader, scum of society in super-level debauchee. Simply put, he is typical parasitic worm with no value or reason to keep alive. That sums up the general information regarding the new identity that June Xie has taken up after transmigrating here. No wonder your body was taken over by me. I was given the name June Xie and the nickname Evil Monarch. On the other hand, you were given the name Moxie. Are you not ashamed? There is no injustice in this at all. TL. This is another Chinese pinyin matter. June Moxie's character Moxie is Ma Xie, which means, do no evil. As he recalled the memories of young Master June and all his actions in the past, June Xie let out a deep sigh. If he were to meet such a scum in his past life, he would have voluntarily killed him. Of all the bodies he could have taken over, why did it have to be this dreg of society? June Xie could not help but remember a phrase in Buddha's teachings regarding the laws of cause and effect. If a person is to kill too many pigs, then that person will be reincarnated as a pig in the next life. It seems there is some truth to these words after all. The amount of scums that June Xie has killed in his past life indeed makes up a considerable sum. This debauchee's grandfather, June Zhantian, is a highly decorated Grand Duke and a very powerful military figure of the kingdom. His father, June Wuhui, was a great general of the kingdom, but he fell in battle 10 years ago. His mother died of depression 1 year after that, while both his brothers June Mou and June Mo Cho died a heroic death in a war 3 years ago. Another uncle, June Wui, was also seriously wounded in the war 10 years ago. Although he survived, he was paralyzed from the waist down. A great clan, which was once brimming with valiant heroes, has now fallen to this sorry state of almost losing its final successor. The final successor, June Moxie, ended up losing his body to June Xie. Thankfully, he was able to maintain his identity as a member of the June family. Should June Xie ever father any children in the future, then that child will theoretically be another successor of the June family's bloodline. Perhaps, this was heaven's grace towards the June family. Since this is heaven's will, then I will consider the fact that we are both of the June descent and face the situation for you. June Xie grinned while shrugging. Truth be told, I really do not want to. To have this kind of crappy body and shitty reputation, I can only imagine the amount of suffering I will have to face due to this. June Moxie's lingering spirit shouted in indignation. You think I want this? You cheap bastard. Opening the door, June Xie stepped outside where there is sunlight. Facing the brilliant rays of light emitted by the sun, June Xie sighed. The sun remains the same old sun, but I am already not me. June Moxie is not June Xie. However, my heart remains the heart of a June. So what if I'm in another world? The two maids who were standing before the door, bowed and greeted. Young master. June Xie lightly nodded his head as he checked his surroundings. Observing the other 4 maids who were busy with something not far away, he could not help but shake his head. June Xie looked around. Other young masters are waited upon by enchanting beauties, but those who wait upon him are all at the level of aunties. The only exception would be the 11-year-old Lolita. Thinking back, these maids were all arranged by his grandfather. These maids all share one noticeable feature: they are very healthy and robust. Just look at those muscular legs, they could put a tree to shame. What are they doing? Lifting his head, he indicated with his chin towards several maids in the distant. June Xie asked. There. Helping young master feed the birds and dogs as well as those fighting beasts, an older maid replied, lowering her head. Oh. June Xie strolled over to the area. What an exotic sight to behold. 7 to 8 cages were placed in an orderly manner above jardinières each, containing several different colored birds hopping around in a lively manner. Not far away, a few large dogs were lying on the ground with their tongues jutting out, each and every one has shit for brains. Some distance away, the sound of crickets could be heard issuing out from several bamboos some distance away. From the sound it is making, it seems these are some rare breed with high-grade fighting skills. It seems the original young master had a very diverse range of hobby. There was actually a cage beside housing 2 colorful hissing snakes. Jun Xie frowned in disgust as he observed his surroundings. Find someone to sell all these away as soon as possible. Those that can't be sold, just throw them away. Either that or just kill them for their meat. Placing them here will make people sick. This is a human residential area, not a zoo. What? Hearing those words, the 6 maids and the little Lolita following Jun Xie had their eyes bulge out in surprise. They raised their heads and stared in stupor at their young master. At that moment, all 7 of them had the same line of thought. Did the young master go mad today? These were all bought at an incredibly exorbitant price. These are your precious treasures. What, you want to sell it all away today and buy it back again tomorrow? Oh, don't sell those snakes. I'll use them for soup when I return. Jun Xie walked ahead without looking back. Speechless. They continued walking through a garden, several pavilions, a drill field, then went around a very big pond. He then walked for another half a long hour through a road amidst 2 rows of trees before reaching Grandpa Jun's residence. Jun Xie discovered that his own residence and Grandpa Jun's residence are located on the south and north respectively. If one were to measure the distance between them in a straight line, it would likely amount to roughly 6 li. It seems that the present size of his clan is quite big. If memory served, this should be the capital of this kingdom. For the clan to have a residence with an area of several tens of mu in the capital, excluding the imperial palace, there are probably only a small handful of families who could achieve the same feat. TL. Long hour, or shirchen, is 2 hours of standard time. 1 li is 0.3 miles or 0.5 kilometers. 1 mu is roughly 666.6 meters square. Grandpa Jun was seated behind his desk. Even though he is over 60 years of age, he still possessed shiny black hair. Looking at him one would mistake him for someone in his 40s. His majestic countenance was filled with helplessness as he watched his grandson lazily enter in a feeble manner. He almost lost his temper. Jun Zhantian was born poor. He then became a general in his youth, fighting throughout the world. His name brought terror to the military forces of every kingdoms. Not only does he possess superior military tactics, he was also one of the few within Tianxiang Kingdom with the cultivation level of Earth Xian rank. Endowed with a profound steadiness in character, he can maintain a calm exterior regardless of joy or fury. His ability to rise from poverty to a general in youth alone proved his capabilities. How many can replicate this feat? How long does it take one to become a general? And yet, he managed to climb up there in his youth. Jun Zhantian fought his way from a lowly pauper until he became a highly decorated Grand Duke. The time it took for him to accomplish this was a good 40 years. Even though it is said that the flow of time creates heroes, but based on the history of the continent, the number of such heroes are far and few in between. However, whenever he gazed upon his one and only grandson, he felt helpless. His development had been nothing short of a letdown. Grandpa Jun really could not figure out how his family lineage in addition to the high level of management can give birth to this worthless scum. This brat knows neither literary nor martial arts. He will become giddy once he picks up a book, and disappears faster than a magic rabbit when he hears the word practice. Other families' grandsons are perfect, having made a name for themselves at a young age. Their cultivation of Xian Qi is on the right track, with a minimum of 5th level or above. On the other hand, his own precious grandson has forced 5 teachers to quit, and his cultivation of Xian Qi is only at a miserable 3rd level. He was already such a disappointing figure, but he also taught himself how to eat, drink, gamble and visit prostitutes, becoming a reputed genius in these areas. Grandpa June was a hero of his time, and yet he ended up with such a kind of grandson. Sighing weakly, Grandpa June recalled his other two grandchildren, if only they were still alive. He then let out a self-deprecating laugh. If those two were still alive, would he have pampered this one and only surviving bloodline until this point? Back when he heard that his son Wu Hui was killed in battle, he stoically endured without crying. He even boasted that his son was a brave hero. When his two grandchildren Mo Yu and Mo Cho too died in the battlefield, he once again held back his tears as his grandsons were valiant heroes. Then, Wu Yu was crippled for life, causing tears to run down his eyes for the first time. Nonetheless, his heart was still glad because there is still hope. By luck, he still has a grandson. The June family bloodline can continue. Unfortunately, the grandson turns out to be a little bastard, a smear on the walls that cannot be developed in any manner. What can I do about it? I heard you fell off the bed last night. And you ended up fainting. Is that true? Jun Zhantian dismissively asked as he hid his emotions. Ha! Jun Xie raised his head. His heart was partially doubtful, but he finally started to understand. Through the memories left in his mind, he could answer any question except this one. In fact, this question had been constantly lingering in his mind. When he woke up this morning, he did not find anything out of the ordinary with this body, so how did he end up transmigrating to this body? At this moment, he was able to vaguely guess that this bastard must have fallen off his bed while sleeping and ended up being killed by the fall. This person is truly a champion amongst debauchees, one worth idolizing. To think that it is actually possible to die from falling off the bed. Jun Xie's heart was filled with sincere admiration. An expert such as this is one that must be treated with respect. What ha. Grandpa June pounded the table, staring at him. Seeing Jun Xie's slothful figure, he could not stop himself from shouting. You worthless thing, you don't even realize that someone was trying to assassinate you. If it were not for the protection I arranged for you, by now you're probably having an audience with King Yama. Look at you, can't you tell me anything at all? TL. King Yama is king of hell. It turns out that this kid was assassinated. Jun Xie secretly curled his mouth. Your so-called protection is only so. So, your dear grandson has already left this world while being under your protection. Observing Jun Xie's reaction, Grandpa Jun's heart was surprised. Considering this idiot's cowardly nature, how could he remain so quiet? Back then, if he heard that someone was trying to assassinate him, he would be making a huge fuss. Now instead, all he did was stand there looking slightly pale, seemingly unbothered. In addition, his body was emanating a faint aura of coldness. Am I seeing things now? Grandpa June was unable to believe that such a chilling aura could appear from this disappointing grandson's body. Chapter 3, Jun Wui. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 003, Jun Wui. Regular chapter. That's enough. Even though we're one family, you deliberately chose to live in the most southern mansion. Sigh. Come tomorrow, you'll move back here. He then stared deeply at Jun Xie. Jun Zhantian felt an aching pain budding within him. No matter how much of a debauched wretch he was, no matter how disappointing he was still his grandson. Furthermore, he is the last successive bloodline of the Jun family. Although the current state of foreign affairs is stable and peaceful, several princes have grown of age, leading towards an inevitable time of internal strife. As the top military powerhouse, Jun Zhantian was akin to a towering tree, which everyone wished to include in their network of allies. This attempt on his only bloodline was probably one of their schemes to create internal disaster. If Jun Xie does not move back here, he fears that there will only be more of such attempts in the future. I've been living very well there, there's no need to move. Jun Xie flatly refused. Are you kidding me? This is a very rare chance to experience the techniques of this world's fellow assassins. If I move back now, would I not lose this opportunity? Hearing Grandpa June discussing about this matter, Jun Xie's heart palpitated lightly with excitement. Assassinations. A subject that seems so far away, and yet it remains the most intimate part of his memories. Noel View. Wretch. Grandpa June's temper erupted. He raised his hand to slap Jun Xie, but just before his palm reached Jun Xie's face, he paused for a long time. With a complicated look on his face, he uttered, "You. Just go then. Is this the first time this kid refused me? He actually dares to refuse me today. In addition, this is a complete rejection." Jun Xie bent his body ceremoniously, straightened up and walked away. "Oh, one more thing, from today onwards you are not allowed to go pester Princess Ling Meng. For this matter, there are no rooms for negotiation, period." Grandpa June's sound was filled with a faint and unspeakable sense of dejection and coldness. In recent years, the June family seemingly possessed the strength to grasp even the heavens, as though they're the only sovereigns in the kingdom, but this family suffers from a fatal flaw, and that is the lack of a capable successor. The only third-generation descendant, Jun Moxie, is a young debauchee. Grandpa June is a man seemingly in his 40s, with a mind and body resistant towards the ravages of time, but in his heart he knew that if he does not do anything, then the June family would likely be erased from this world in the near future. Looking at Jun Moxie's current state of affairs, this is the most inevitable outcome. In fact, he could practically see it happen. So, Jun Zhantian once hardened himself to shamelessly ask the emperor to bestow Jun Moxie with a marriage with His Majesty's most beloved Princess Ling Meng. If this matter was to succeed, then even after his death Jun Moxie will have a safe harbor to rely on. As the princess husband, he will have the identity of royalty. As long as he does not make any outrageous sort of mess, then the Jun family bloodline can be preserved. Prince Consort, this position seems grand and magnificent, but is in truth the most embarrassing of all government positions. For any minister with power and authority, their biggest fear would be to suddenly receive an imperial order, bestowing their son with a marriage with the princess. You want them to allow their son to bring home a princess so that their grandfather and grandmother can ceremoniously bow to their son's daughter-in-law. In addition, there are also rules that needed to be observed. A prince consort is absolutely prohibited from taking any concubine. If the princess happens to possess a perverse personality or a heart filled with jealousy, then that family will not have any good days in the future. However, this is simply the best insurance plan for a debauchee like Jun Moxie. At least this plan would be the best one to keep the Jun family alive. Thus, Jun Zhantian willingly proposed this marriage without any feelings of upset or coercion. His Majesty, the Emperor, naturally understood the intention of this old comrade who was like a big brother to him. While His Majesty felt moved by Jun Zhantian's predicament, after looking over Jun Moxie's history and everything he had done, in addition to Princess Ling Meng's refusal, he had to refuse the proposal after a long time of careful consideration. "Brother Jun, it's not that your younger brother is unwilling to give you face, but I am still a father. Ling Meng is my most beloved daughter. How can I marry off my own daughter to a Sai?" His Majesty lowered his head before finishing his sentence, causing Jun Zhantian to lose his breath. "A father. Consideration for your daughter. If this was a decade ago where my Jun family was at its most prosperous period, would you not go mad with joy if I were to bring up this proposal? The state of human relations is just like drinking water. Grandpa Jun's heart was filled with resentment. TL. Not sure how I should go about translating that. Oh, I understand. Jun Xie lightly replied as he stood in the doorway. Within his tone, there was neither shock nor joy, like a bowl of plain water. He immediately walked out. Since Grandpa Jun informed him of his proposal, Jun Moxie had constantly considered himself as the prince consort of Princess Ling Meng, going as far as stalking Princess Ling Meng, vexing her to no end. But at this moment, Jun Xie received the news with indifference, causing Grandpa Jun to feel surprised. If Jun Xie had become angry or hysterical, or even went cursing out in the streets, Grandpa Jun would not have felt surprised at all. However, Jun Xie's current attitude simply left him in shock. Did falling down the bed cause his character to change? Grandpa Jun stroked his beard, staring deeply at the back of Jun Xie who was leaving. Not long after, Jun Zhantian clapped his hands and said, "Arrange a few more experts to guard the young master at night, I don't want any more mishaps to happen. If you see any suspicious person, kill them on the spot without any hesitation. Don't even think about trying this a second time. You think you can just waltz in here and take the life of Jun Zhantian's grandson?" Grandpa Jun's eyes flashed with coldness. Grandpa Jun seemed to be speaking to thin air within the empty room, but a faint and vague voice of a man suddenly resounded from somewhere. "Understood." Jun Xie walked out with the sunlight showering down at him. As the warm rays of light shone on his face, he continued walking towards his own courtyard. Along the way, he continuously met servants who bowed to him in fear and trepidation, but he went on without giving them any notice, as he was lost in his thoughts. Nobody knew that at this moment, the thoughts that was echoing within the heart of Jun Xie. What is an assassin? As the name suggests, an assassin is one who assassinates. We are the hands of darkness. Always remember this word, darkness. An assassin is always an illusionary existence, entering like the wind and disappearing into nothingness. What constitutes a successful assassin? If nobody knows that he is an assassin with blood-soaked hands until the day he dies, then he is a successful assassin. In that case, what are the qualifications of a super assassin? This so-called qualifications of an assassin is the ability to insert himself into any atmosphere and situation. When placed within scholars, he will transform into a poet; within painters, he will transform into an artist; within rogues, he will transform into a villain; within socialites, he will transform into a nobleman, a gentleman; within sexual offenders, he will transform into a sexual predator; within heroes, he will transform into an exemplary champion. In the desert, he is the lizard; the prairie, he is the wolf king. In the mountains, he is the king of beasts, the tiger. When floating above the seas, he is the tide bringer, the dragon. That is the qualities of a successful assassin. One who only knows how to kill is at best a butcher. Only one who has a clear goal in mind when assassinating, in addition to being successful each time, can be regarded as a good assassin. Assassination. It is an art in itself. As an assassin, one must never, ever profane the elegance of this art. This was a conversation he once had with his master in his past life. Thinking about this, Jun Xie's mouth broke into a smile and he murmured, "The current me is nothing more than a worthless freeloading, second-generation ancestor just waiting for death's call." Suddenly, a cold voice resounded. "Wrong. You're not the second-generation ancestor, I am the second-generation ancestor, while you are the third-generation ancestor." Chapter 4, Second Generation, Third Generation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 004. Second Generation, Third Generation. A wheelchair moved before Jun Xie's eyes. Seated on it was a thin middle-aged man in his 30s, above his legs were a layer of thick satin. His bright eyes were staring at him, his eyebrows were like swords, slanting upwards towards his temple. His body exuded a natural aura of coldness and killing intent. Deep within his falcon-like eyes flashed a faint glint of contempt. Even though it was not much, it was still obvious. If this man's legs were not disabled, he would be a husband with the qualities of a jade tree. An outstanding, fearless, steel-bodied hero. Judging from the residual aura of might evident within his eyebrows, he must have once been a highly decisive, powerful army general commanding tens of thousands in a bloody war. TL. Jade plants are supposed to be a symbol of prosperity. Third uncle. Jun Xie halted. Seeing Jun Wui, who was seated on the wheelchair, Jun Xie recalled from his memories that this third uncle had been reduced to someone who can simply continue being seated on a wheelchair, capable of doing nothing, another messed up freeloader waiting for his time. But the current Jun Xie could sense that this third uncle who had lived with a wheelchair for so many years was emitting a very familiar aura. This aura sent a chill down his spine. Killing intent. A killing intent so thick, it stirred even Jun Xie's heart. To possess such a distinctively unique fighting spirit, one must be baptized within the fires of 100 battles, an iron-willed war veteran who had fought his way out through mountains of corpses and a sea of blood. This aura is akin to a peerless blade's ray of sharpness, which cannot be buried even after it was broken, a coercive brilliance shining throughout the skies. However, that peerless blade was currently being wrapped under its sheath. Throughout Jun Xie's entire life, he had only been able to meet at most 2 or 3 of such high-class individuals, each and every single one of them held a monumental position within the military. These iron-blooded valiant generals are the kind of individuals that Jun Xie admired the most. Actually, Grandpa Jun is also one such individual. However, Grandpa Jun is already an aged veteran, reaching the point where his cultivation allowed him to restrain his aura, keeping them hidden all the time. Jun Xie's meeting with Grandpa Jun was only worth moments, as such, he failed to detect it. However, Jun Wui had yet to achieve the state of keeping a lid on his aura. His entire being was no different from a peerless sword. Even though the blade was being kept under the sheath, an awe-inspiring sword chi can be felt leaking out. Naturally, one must possess Jun Xie's level of awareness to detect it. Ordinary men such as the likes of Jun Moxie will never realize this even if you beat them to their death. Although the peerless sword had been cast aside, left hanging off the walls, it would still emit the howls of a dragon in the midst of the night. This howl signifies a thirst for blood that has been engraved into its very bones. How rare for you to be calling me your third uncle. Jun Wui raised his head, his dark eyes cynically glanced at his nephew. Moxie, it seems you are interested in becoming a second-generation ancestor. After speaking, he suddenly sighed, wondering what is wrong with him today. Why would he suddenly feel like talking to a smear on the wall that cannot be developed at all? Jun Xie looked at him for a long time, but his eyes were focused on the disabled waist and legs of Jun Wui. Then he suddenly laughed. Third uncle must be joking. You are the genuine second-generation ancestor, and I am at best only the third-generation ancestor. A peaceful and happy life of a third generation is more than enough for me. Why is this kid speaking with this kind of tone today? Although the words have thorns, it lacks the arrogance and bossiness of the past. Hearing Jun Xie's answer, Jun Wui's eyes flashed, a sharp radiance flashing within his eyes, akin to a brilliant ray of lightning piercing through the darkness of the night sky. Suddenly he laughed loudly, shaking his head. He asked, "Do you know the difference between a second-generation ancestor and a third-generation ancestor?" "Oh. Aren't they similarly worthless freeloaders just waiting for death's call? Is there actually a difference?" Jun Xie raised his eyebrows, his words filled with thorns. Watching a respectable iron-blooded man like Jun Wui, whose glare can give lightning and thunders a run for their money, fall into such a sorry state of depression, Jun Xie couldn't help but feel saddened. Jun Wui's eyes glimmered with bitterness and unwillingness, but it dissipated immediately. Placing his hands on his laps, he raised his head and said, "This remark is a big fallacy. How can there be no difference? Each of them are worlds apart. The second-generation ancestor are the fathers who laid the foundation with their blood so that their sons may sit back and enjoy the fruits of their labor. The sons will not face any difficulties in their life. As long as they are born with a mouth capable of eating, they will not die and can even enjoy a life of luxuries. However, that is not the case for the third-generation ancestor." He looked at Jun Xie in the eye, then laughed before continuing. "The so-called third-generation ancestor is not necessarily the ones born into the third generation, but those who becomes the successors of the third generation. That is to say, grandfather laid the foundations but the line was severed in the middle of the way during your father's era, leading towards the third generation. If your father is still alive, then you and I will be second-generation ancestor. Me from grandfather's generation and you from you father's, that is the only difference. TL. At. Hierarchies, man. Yeah, they were calling themselves ancestors. I'm guessing they have the mind set that they will be able to pave a path for future generations to call them that or something. But your grandfather is now old, even if you have the determination to become a third-generation ancestor, you probably will not be able to hold on to that position for a long time. With the exception of grandfather, there are no more trees for you to seek protection from. Your life as the third-generation ancestor will likely be very tough. Becoming a third-generation ancestor is absolutely impossible for those lacking in ability and determination. That's why, as a second-generation ancestor, I am comparatively luckier than you, the third-generation ancestor. Jun Wui's words were originally meant to counter Jun Xie's phrase, useless freeloader waiting for death's call. But as he kept speaking, a feeling of sadness surged through his heart. Is this truly the end for the great Jun family? A family, which once rose to prominence, had now fallen to such a degree. His first and second brother was killed in battle, he himself was paralyzed, the two nephews he placed his hopes on also ended up dying in battle, their bodies lost, the only remaining Jun family bloodline is this idiotic waste Jun Moxie. At this point, Jun Wui felt himself losing interest, he doesn't even have the strength to say anything anymore. Jun Xie was silent a moment, before grinning and letting out a laugh. Actually, I too can be a second-generation ancestor. How can Jun Xie not understand Jun Wui's words? What he desired was exactly for Jun Wui to say those words. Jun Wui inadvertently coughed twice, his interest roused but he lazily asked. Oh. If third uncle can become a tree and create a comfortable spot for me, would I not be able to become a second-generation ancestor? Jun Xie smiled. A glint of fury appeared in Jun Wui's eyes as he asked in a low voice. Moxie, are you taunting your uncle here? Jun Xie stared at him, suddenly asking. Do your legs have any sense of awareness? No. Jun Wui turned his head to the other side, his heart becoming increasingly annoyed with his nephew. Jun Moxie obviously knew that he absolutely detests hearing about his disability, and yet that brat keeps bringing it up. Back then, at least he was indirect about it, but now he actually asked it in his face. A descendant who does not even know how to show his respect for his elders, they're better off without him. Was your waist ever broken before? No. Jun Wui's temper erupted. Darned brat. If my waist was broken, would I still be able to live until this day? That is to say, at most only your meridians are damaged. You were dealt with an underhanded move. Jun Xie's eyes lit up, it seems as though someone have either severed his meridians or eroded it using some insidious poison, causing it to shrink and wither. If that is the case, as long as there is no deficiency in blood or qi, then there is still hope. With his knowledge in medicines, there should still be an opportunity for recovery. After all, this man is still his blood relative in this world, and also someone who had impressed Jun Xie, a iron-blooded man with a towering fighting spirit. In Jun Xie's mind, since he has the capacity, then he should assist this iron-blooded valiant stand up again, even in a case where he was not his own uncle. Jun Xie looked at him, slowly asking. I heard that you were hurt on the battlefield, but to do this to you in the battlefield would be far harder than simply killing you. Why would they do so? For your enemies to do this to you, it seems they want you to suffer a life worse than death. Those words stabbed straight into his sore spot, causing Jun Wui to clench his teeth, the veins on his forehead convulsing a few times. Taking deep breaths while gasping, he could barely bring himself under control before replying. What does this have to do with you? Realizing that he guessed correctly, Jun Xie smiled, he moved to the front, holding on to the wheelchair and asked. Third uncle, do you want to take revenge? Look at me now. Can I even talk about revenge? Jun Wui's face was flushed red, his face fluctuating, extreme hatred flashing in his eyes. After a long time, he let out a sigh. The current me is nothing more than a basket case. Jun Xie smiled gently. What if I were to have the ability to make you stand up again, third uncle? This sentence was like thunder exploding in his ears. Chapter 5, A Ray of Hope. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 005. A Ray of Hope. Even though Jun Xie's words were spoken in a soft voice, for Jun Wui those words were tantamount to a clap of thunder resounding throughout the skies. Suddenly, Jun Wui's eyes were opened wide, a layer of brilliant yellow glow emitted outwards from his body, causing others to not dare look at him. Unleashing an unusually powerful strength from his body, he suddenly grabbed onto Jun Xie's arm, and asked eagerly. Moxie, are you saying that you have the means to cure me? It appears that during those many years of recuperation, Jun Wui had never stopped practicing his Xian Qi cultivation. This layer of yellow light symbolized the strength of an Earth Xian ranked expert. Even though he was currently only at the early stages, his achievements in correspondence to his age is truly rare. In all of Tianxiang Kingdom, how many Earth Xian ranked experts can you find? For Jun Wui to climb all the way to Earth Xian rank in a mere 30-odd years, this feat was simply comparable to that of a sky-shaking genius. Not to mention, all the meridians on his lower body were severely defective. If it were not defective, then his strength would have certainly been able to enter an even higher stage. Jun Xie's arm produced cracking sounds due to Jun Wui's powerful grip strength. However, his face remained calm and indifferent, as though it was not his own arm that was being gripped. Feeling not an ounce of pain, he smiled and replied. I have no guarantees, but I can try. Jun Wui suddenly became aware of his surroundings. He quickly retracted his arms. Taking a look at his own hands, a wave of doubt suddenly washed over him as he turned towards Jun Xie. Weren't you in pain? Why aren't you crying? I am in pain. Jun Xie lightly replied. But if I cry, will it stop hurting? If it would, I will be first to cry out loud. Unfortunately, things do not work that way. Seeing the look of indifference on Jun Xie's face, Jun Wui was greatly startled. Jun Wui stared at him long and deep before suddenly laughing loudly. Ha! Now you have actually managed to convince me that you could actually cure me. This nephew of mine seemed different from before. Jun Wui secretly thought to himself. What needs to be done currently is to get the servants to massage your body once every morning, afternoon and evening every day. If possible, get servants with a background in martial arts to massage along the meridians. Don't miss even one of the treatment. Every night, you also need to soak yourself in hot water for 1 long hour, 2 hours, no interruptions allowed. After a period of time, when the preparation on my side is done, then we can start on your treatment. Is that all right? Jun Xie smiled. Jun Wui slowly calmed his emotions down, then said seriously. Very well. Moxie, third uncle will trust you this once. Both his hands slowly balled up into fists. Jun Wui slowly said. Even if it fails, I will accept it. He left out another part unsaid. Even if you're just messing around with me, I will also accept it. A strand of hope is better than none at all. After all these years, I believe third uncle has gone to see many doctors. Jun Xie felt that something was off. After having checked Jun Wui's body again, he realized that Jun Wui's current state is truly not optimistic. All the meridians at the waist had been completely blocked off. In addition, there was also a heretical drug slowly eroding his meridians. If it was not for his high level of care and maintenance, his muscles would have already suffered from atrophy. At that point, he would truly become a cripple with no chance of recovery. Even if those high-level doctors were unable to cure him, they should have been able to see that. Not only that. Pretty much all the well-known doctors from the kingdom have been invited over to check up on me. Not only was I attacked with an insidious skill which sealed off my meridians, I was also inflicted with a highly peculiar and toxic poison, leaving me with a life worse than death. Jun Wui replied with a face full of hate. Father had already tried many times to break the insidious seal on my meridians, but was always unsuccessful. As for that nameless poison, no drugs could fight off against it. The only possibility would be to utilize an extremely powerful Xian Qi to force it out. That may be the only way left to cure me. If that is the case, then why? Jun Xia asked, but stopped halfway. Those who plotted against me back then were Sky Xian ranked experts. In order to unlock their seal and force out the poison, we would require a Supreme Divine ranked expert to lend a hand. But Supreme Divine ranked experts are near mythical existences who would meet only the heads of organizations, and not the tails of the organization. Worst yet, after treating my injury, the Supreme Divine expert would lose half their strength due to severe exposure from the poison, with no chance of ever recovering. Jun Wui smiled bitterly. Which Supreme Divine ranked expert would make such a big sacrifice for my sake? Moxie, to achieve the Supreme Divine level of cultivation is as hard as ascending the heavens. Who in their right mind would possibly throw away half of their life's worth of cultivation for my sake? What a vicious hand! Throwing you into a state where you know how to be treated and yet, that hope is unattainable. Jun Xia shook his head. It seems this guy's hate for you is beyond ordinary. Using such a sinister method to torment you, his intention is probably to leave you with neither a path of life, nor the will to die. Jun Xia paused for a moment, then unexpectedly asked. Are those people our family's blood enemy? Moxie, you. Where did you find the method of treatment for me? Jun Xia's question caused Jun Wui's eyes to flicker with pain. He did not answer the question, instead he looked at Jun Xia with an evaluating expression. Today, it seems as though you're a completely different person. Honestly, third uncle's ailment has always been in my mind, day or night. Jun Xia broke out a sweat. This method of treatment is just something I found by accident, but it seems very effective, so I thought I should try it out. Third uncle, we are not strangers, it is only natural that I would wish for third uncle to get better. Truthfully, though, this is also for my sake. I wish to be protected by third uncle and live a stable life as a second-generation ancestor. It cannot be helped, that is simply the kind of person I am. Haha. Stinking brat. Jun Wui scoffed, and then suddenly looking solemn, he said. Moxie, regardless of whether this succeeds or fails, third uncle will accept this act of kindness of yours. His voice rang loud and clear. Third uncle, just wait until the day comes when you can offer me shelter, that way I'll be able to become a normal second-generation ancestor, aha. Jun Xia checked again before making up his mind. As long as he can increase his own internal energy by just a bit compared to that of his past life, coupled with his own personal knowledge of acupuncture and medicinal drugs, he will be able to use a three-pronged treatment method to cure Jun Wui. The reason he had Jun Wui undergo those massages to slowly treat himself was mainly to buy time. The current him do not have the slightest bit of internal energy. The acupuncture treatment requires a profound amount of internal energy for support in order to work. Jun Wui's eyes lit up as he heard those words which were filled with a high amount of self-confidence. Smiling he said. Moxie, your level of Xian Qi cultivation is only at that of the third level, not much stronger compared to the average commoners. And yet, you withstood my powerful grip without batting an eye. With such a character and endurance, there's no way you'll just be an ordinary second-generation ancestor. Even though that grab by Jun Wui earlier was not performed with his full strength, how can any ordinary layman endure the grasp of an Earth Xian ranked expert? It is likely that even a gold-ranked expert would wrinkle their eyebrows in reaction to his grip, and yet Jun Xia, who only has a negligible cultivation of third-level Xian Qi, was actually able to endure it. In addition, he did not even utilize his own Xian Qi to resist. Jun Wui was well aware of how much pain Jun Xia had to endure, especially when such pain was inflicted while he was still unprepared, but his face did not even flinch. This level of mind. What a pity. Looking at Jun Xie, Jun Wui sighed yet again. What a pity that Jun Xie's age is already too advanced. Even if he is someone capable of enduring painful hardships, even if he were to devote his entire remaining life into cultivating Xian Qi, it would be hopeless. Otherwise, with his level of unyielding tolerance, the Jun family would have been able to produce yet another terrifying expert. Chapter 6, Xian Qi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 006. Xian Qi. Regular Chapter, Third Uncle. Regarding the matter of your ailment, you must select those who are trustworthy, especially when it comes to those who will help massage you. It will best if no one is to know about this matter. If this treatment is to fail, then us uncle and nephew will not have to lose so much face. Jun Xie spoke after thinking over for a while. Haha, even if the treatment were to be successful, I still would not inform anyone about it. Your third uncle is not an idiot. What you fear is that this matter will invite trouble for us, right? Besides, if you can truly cure my waist and legs, then both you and I will become the perfect hidden cards for our Jun family. How can I not know about something like this? You little devil, you even tried to use your third uncle's face as an excuse. Jun Wui let out a laugh, and then he pinched his face. He suddenly had a startling thought. In his heart he realized, this brat was once his most beloved nephew. Yet, how long has it been since the both of them were so intimate? On the other hand, perhaps it was precisely because they have not been so intimate for such a long time. Maybe that was why he had such a strange feeling when he saw him again today. Portraying himself on the surface as a debauchee for so many years, could it be that there was a different face hidden underneath? Jun Wui's gaze was locked onto Jun Xie's back as he turned and was about to walk away. Jun Wui's heart bubbled with anticipation. He looked forward to seeing whether or not his injury can be treated successfully, and even more so, he looked forward to seeing if his nephew truly had a hidden face. Third uncle, you have already reached Earth Xian rank, correct? Jun Xie asked with laughter. You peeping Tom. Jun Wui chuckled, his heart felt an incomparable sense of carefreeness, and replied. I've just reached this realm this year, it's not stabilized yet. You're being modest. Jun Xie curled his lips. What is above Earth Xian rank? Jun Wui's face looked startled, he replied. Xian Qi cultivation begins with 9 levels, after the 9 levels comes the silver level, gold level, jade level, the levels end here. Above it are the Earth Xian, Sky Xian, and the Supreme Divine Xian. From the first level to third level, the released Xian Qi will be noticeable. The colors are dim red, pink red, and thick red. Fourth level to sixth level, the color is purple with the same 3 stages. From 7 to 9, the color is black. Moxie, when you go outside, you must keep a careful lookout for these signs. One careless interpretation could end in disaster. I understand, third uncle. Jun Xie smiled, his face remained indifferent. Jun Wui passionately recited. Silver is the beginning, gold is growth, jade signifies the budding process, 9 and below are but ants, Earth Xian splits everything, Sky Xian leaves only the air, Supreme Divine Xian becomes formless, comparable to the 9 heavens transforming into a soaring dragon. This is the recitals for the Xian Qi stages. Only when you've reached the silver Xian will you be considered a beginner. As for you. Jun Wui looked at Jun Xie, a gentle look appeared in his eyes. You will have your own path to take. Just because one is a man, that does not mean he must use his own hands to kill. Jun Xie smiled. I understand, I am not someone who will kill people all the time. He personally added within his mind. Without any remuneration, there is no way I will kill anyone. Naturally, there is one condition. Do not mess with me. The current Jun Xie had absolutely no interest in this so-called Xian Qi, so he did not try to take any steps towards understanding it. After sending Jun Wui back to his room, Jun Xie walked back with a slow pace. While walking halfway though, he turned around and went towards the library building. The reason he entered this place was none other than the fact that the previous third young Master June had too little information in his brain. With the exception of information pertaining to sensual pleasures, gambling, eating and drinking, his head was basically filled with nothing else, a sticky blob of worthless mud. No matter how much June Xie wanted to glean some useful information from his memories, it was impossible. This was why he needed to spend some time to reorganize everything within his memories. At the very least, he must tidy it up. That way, even if this third young Master June's brain has no useful information, he could at least understand the state of the June family. June Xie entered the library building and stayed inside for the whole day, not going out at all. Senior Master, after young Master left your place, he had a good chat with the third Master for some time. From the looks of it, third Master seems happy. In recent years, it is rare to see the third Master looking so happy. Within Jun Zhantian's study, an old man bowed before Jun Zhantian, reporting the whereabouts of June Xie. Jun Zhantian's face, which had maintained a calm demeanor all these years, expressed a stunned look. This uncle and nephew have always been as incompatible as fire and water for so many years. Whenever they meet, both of them will throw looks of ridicule at one another. The more they see one another, the more their eyes will feel sored. How could these two suddenly decide to start a conversation today? In addition, they had a good chat. To think that Jun Wui would end up becoming happy from that conversation, this was too surprising. It would not be far-fetched to consider this an abnormal occurrence. What were they talking about? Jun Zhantian asked as he drank some tea, his voice remained casual. In recent years, even though the third master was disabled, he was still able to cultivate himself at great pace. Considering that he is now at the early Earth Xian stage, I dared not get too close and was unable to hear the contents of their conversation. I was only able to see that both third master and young master were obviously happy while chatting agreeably away. The old man answered respectfully. Agreeable. Jun Zhantian stroked his beard. How is that possible? For them to be together for so long without anyone dying is already an extremely fortunate event. And yet they were actually chatting agreeably. This matter is absolutely true. Senior Master, after the young master left the third master, he actually went straight into the library building and has yet to come out. The library building does not have many external factors or influence. I believe it is of minimal importance. But the matter of the young master having a conversation with the third master is too surprising. That is why I decided quickly report it to Senior Master. You did the right thing, but you said this kid went into the library building. Jun Zhantian's beard trembled, and his eyes widened in shock. Are you sure you said it right? That little bastard Jun Moxie actually went to the library building. Instead of the 10,000 Flowers Pavilion, Wafting Fragrance Pavilion or others. Like that. The old man nodded firmly. It is the library building. There is no mistake, Senior Master. Jun Zhantian practically jumped up from his seat, then paced back and forth in the room. His usually calm exterior was gone, replaced by a deep frown as he tugged his own beard. Old Pang, do you know what this bastard plans to do inside the library building? He suddenly stopped. It can't be that he's going to set it on fire, is he? The young master was reading books inside. Judging by how quiet he was, I felt that he would not be leaving anytime soon. That is why I could feel at ease and return to make a report. Old Pang replied, his mouth restraining the desire to laugh. Reading books. Grandpa Jun cried out in surprise as he tugged out a strand of his own beard. Curling his lips, he asked. He is really reading those books. He is, Senior Master. After thinking for a long while, Jun Zhantian waved his hand. Reading is a good thing. Since that is the case, do not disturb him for now. Once he leaves the library, get me those books that he was looking over for me to inspect. I am really curious, just what is he planning? Could it be he was looking for erotic paintings? Well, it is all right even if that is what he is looking for. Since he is coming of age now, having a look at those things is no big deal, I still remember. Old Pang, do not allow anyone to bother that kid. Understood, Senior Master. Jun Zhantian walked for another 2 rounds, then he raised his head upwards. Calming himself down, he thought. If those are not arrow. Could it be this kid has finally woken up and decided to turn over a new leaf? He shook his head and sighed aloud. If this is truly the case, then this old bag will really need to go burn some incense and pray to the spirit of the ancestors. Once night time arrived, the butler old Pang went ahead to collect all the books that Jun Xie read before. In total there were a few dozen, which he bundled over. Jun Zhantian placed each book on the table, his face frowning. Xian Continent's current situation, Continental Travelogue, Continental Mountains Records, Person of the Year List, Records of Strange Flowers and Exotic Grasses, Continental Wars Discussion, Xian Art of War. Grandpa Jun spent the entire night looking over the books that his grandson read. His expressions would change constantly in confusion, surprise, happiness. He would sigh, puff, shake his head, and nod his head. It was estimated that he has used up half his entire life's worth of facial expressions in that one night. Chapter 7, Exquisite Hongjun Pagoda. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 007 Exquisite Hongjun Pagoda. Regular chapter. During the next few days, Jun Xie chose not to go out at all. Once he woke up in the morning, he would head straight towards the library building, staying in there for the whole day. He maintained the routine without any exceptions. As for the books that he had read, they would all be sent over to Grandpa Jun's side for analysis yet again. After which Grandpa Jun would shake his head, nod his head, sigh and puff, his face alternating between disappointment, shock and pleasant surprise. It seemed he had yet to finish using up all his lifetime's expressions. In addition, the servants of the Jun family realized that the young master has acquired yet another strange hobby. During the day, he would enter the library building for the whole day without ever coming out. However, when night descends, he would instead walk out to the courtyard and seat himself there. The spot he chose to sit was always the darkest spot where the light cannot reach. Truly heretical. Regarding his new hobby, the servants were actually not too concerned. After all, this was by far better than his previous hobbies. Tonight, Jun Xie was once again seated below a flower tree, enjoying the thick atmosphere of darkness of the night. In this atmosphere of darkness, one would not be able to glimpse their own fingers even when it was stretched out before them. In Jun Xie's heart rose a feeling of safety and security. Indeed, it is the feeling of security. For Jun Xie, who had once become invincible throughout the world as the king of assassins, the safest place can only come from the pitch-black darkness of the night. The night was the only thing that Jun Xie had ever considered to the best and most reliable partner. As he gazed upon the stars in the night sky, Jun Xie suddenly felt as though he was in a dream. For the past few days, he had read through all the books containing information regarding this world. He had more or less understood the current situation of this continent. However, the more he understood, the more confused he became. If it were not for the fact that it was written in black and white within the books, Jun Xie would have assumed that he had transmigrated back in time to the ancient Chinese kingdoms. The people, the accents, the culture and the clothing are all similar to that from the Tang and Song dynasties. It is too similar. Jun Xie groaned as he plopped his head in between his knees, both his hands clutching the back of his head. He grievingly thought. Why? Why am I not in one of the ancient eras of China? If only that were the case, then I would be in a highly advantageous position. The amount of resources I have regarding those eras would be most beneficial. Even if I do not want to change history, I can still take advantage of my foreknowledge, which can put those divine prophets to shame and coast my way through history, avoiding any misfortune. Bo Xian Xian continent, where in the blazes is this? Gold Xian, silver Xian, earth Xian, sky Xian. Xian Qi. Xian your granddaddy. Why is it not internal martial arts? The only thing that remained familiar was perhaps the ancient and everlasting sun and moon, and the gentle caress of the night. This was the only thing that could give Jun Xie the feeling of familiarity. Jun Xie's face was set like a cold hard stone, his cheek muscles throbbed with pain, as he restrained his desire to curse impulsively and loudly at the heavens. At that very moment when Jun Xie was surging with extreme emotions, he suddenly felt a violent wave of headache swept over him. Even with his extraordinary endurance, Jun Xie was still unable to retain a calm face and was forced to grimace his face. The headache suddenly transformed into a wave of dizziness. Observing through his eyes, it seemed as though the whole world was rotating at an unbelievably intense speed. Even the night sky was transformed into a scattering display of madness. The entire world had suddenly become an illusory existence, and unreal. Throughout the painful ordeal, Jun Xie panted while biting down his teeth, blood flowing down from his lips. Both his eyes glared forward as he continued enduring, not allowing even a single sound to escape his lips. I came into this world alone, and thus I must also accept all this pain by myself. In this strange world, I have only myself to depend on and not others. I will never depend on others. Kill. 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 Utilize all my killing skills, I will forge a path of blood. Annihilate the skies. Decimate the lands. Kill. 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 Jun Xie was thrown into a state of haziness, when he suddenly felt something appeared within his sea of consciousness. It was a spark of seemingly distant light, however, it appeared that the light was gradually moving closer towards him. As it got closer, it also became brighter, bigger and clearer. In the end, it transformed into a luminescent rainbow-colored pagoda that overflowed with brilliance. The pagoda kept rotating within his sea of consciousness. With every rotation, it released a misty form of sagely radiance. His body had long since become numb, his 4 limbs paralyzed, his consciousness slowly blurring, and yet Jun Xie continued staring ahead with bloodshot eyes. He kept on glaring, persisting non-stop as he glared ferociously upon this strange realm without as much as a blink. After an indeterminable period of time, a cold wind suddenly blew by, causing Jun Xie to feel cold. The night of the early autumn is indeed still chilly. As this line of thought came to Jun Xie's mind, he became startled as he realized what it meant. To be able to feel cold means that my senses is working again. But, was I not already? He suddenly stood up and found that he was covered in cold sweat. His clothes had been completely soaked with sweat to the point of being uncomfortable. Jun Xie was inexplicably overcome with a strange feeling of a newborn. Jun Xie, who woke up within Jun Moxie's body, can be said to be supporting this body, perhaps by means of transmigrating his mind and soul into it. Nonetheless, Jun Xie remained Jun Xie. But after having endured the unspeakable pain earlier, Jun Xie had truly melded with this body as one. Jun Xie had become Jun Moxie, the true master of this body. TL. __/ Disregarding the messy state of his body, the first thing Jun Xie did was to sit down cross-legged and closed his eyes. He pushed his spiritual awareness deep into his sea of consciousness, as he carefully tried to comprehend something. Jun Xie had long since realized that the excruciating pain from earlier on was the work of the small pagoda within his body. However, Jun Xie also concluded that there must be something else, which the small pagoda did. Otherwise, how could a simple matter of melding of flesh and soul be accompanied by so much pain? He firmly believed that something else must have happened. This small pagoda is the only thing in existence that Jun Xie can rely on. Thus, without understanding what has happened, Jun Xie will never feel contented. Within his sea of consciousness, Jun Xie felt that he could clearly see, with his own eyes, an exquisite pagoda glowing with the brilliance of 7 colors, slowly rotating atop his sea of consciousness. Jun Xie was able to distinctly perceive that each rotation was synchronized with his body's blood and qi flow, each and every time, again and again, an endless cycle. What is going on here? Jun Xie stared at the small pagoda in surprise. This item's capabilities had exceeded all common sense, causing Jun Xie, who was a staunch disbeliever, to fall into a web of confusion. I wonder if I could get closer to take a better look at it. Just as Jun Xie was thinking about this, he suddenly realized that the small pagoda had slowly become larger and larger. After that, the doors to the lowest level of the pagoda suddenly opened, a thick white mist rushed out. In that instant, Jun Xie's awareness became utterly suffused with that white mist. The white mist was so thick it almost felt as though it was solid. Jun Xie took a deep breath and suddenly felt an extreme sense of tranquility, an indescribably comfort, where even the soul felt buoyed to the point where it wanted to sing happily. Jun Xie scanned his surroundings only to find out that he had somehow arrived at the very front of the pagoda. Above his head, 2 ancient texts unveiled themselves. Hongjun Pagoda. Jun Xie headed inside the room only to find it empty, save the thick white mist flowing around. Suddenly, the thick mist flowed together to form 2 lines of characters. 9-layered exquisite pagoda, first eternal art. Then, the white mist rolled together with a sense of urgency, forming a dim and hazy formula that appeared before Jun Xie's awareness. Jun Xie only had enough time to become startled before the countless characters, symbols and drawings all came together in a revolving spiral. Instantly, he felt a vast amount of information rushing into his awareness. It felt as though a speeding train had just charged straight into a small hut. Yet, the train sped all the way inside without any changes happening to the hut. All of a sudden, Jun Xie could not help but become dizzy. His head felt as though it was about to explode as he tumbled onto the ground. Opening his eyes, he realized that he was still lying on the same cold, wet spot as before. Nonetheless, the cultivation formula clearly exists within his sea of consciousness. There was also drawings depicting the pathways throughout the human body, together with the accompanying forms and actions. Art of Unlocking Heaven's Fortune. Jun Xie mumbled aloud, his eyes flashing sharply as his fists clenched itself. Chapter 8, Art of Unlocking Heaven's Fortune. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 008, Art of Unlocking Heaven's Fortune. Regular chapter. Jun Xie realized that his strange situation had further granted him a mysterious encounter of epic proportions. This Art of Unlocking Heaven's Fortune is immeasurably mysterious, and its effectiveness will undoubtedly be far superior to others. As for the 9-layered exquisite pagoda, he had no doubt that this is an incomparable treasure. No matter how ignorant Jun Xie may be, even he had heard of the mythical legend of Hongjun Laozu. It is said that this great god is the master of the 3 great sage gods. Taishang Dao Jun, honored lord of the Tao and its virtue, Yuanshi Tianzuan, honored lord of the origin, and Tong Tian Jiaozhu, grandmaster of heaven. These individuals are heaven-shaking myths without equal under heaven. For this pagoda to be named after Hongjun Laozu, its abilities can never be questionable. TL. I must be a super ignorant person, then. Sigh. Jun Xie was almost overwhelmed by the desire to immediately practice the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, but was finally able to restrain himself. Calming himself down, he inspected his own body and could not help but feel surprised. The surface of his skin was completely covered by a layer of black, greenish muddy liquid. The unbelievably disgusting muddy liquid was releasing a sickeningly foul stench. In addition, it was a very thick layer. A name with legendary qualities and origin suddenly appeared within Jun Xie's sea of consciousness. Pulp-rending meridian cleanser. Could it be? After just that one time of extreme pain, all the impurities within my body have been ejected out. Jun Xie became uncontrollable ecstatic. If only I knew earlier that there would be this kind of miraculous effect, even another round of pain would be no big deal. Indeed, as far as Jun Xie was concerned, no amount of pain can be compared with the benefits of increasing his body's strength. As long as his body's strength can be upgraded, what was a little bit of pain? No matter how unbearably painful it might be, it was still worth it. Jun Xie stood up in excitement. Enduring the stench emanating from his body, he swiftly ran towards a pond within his family residence. Unhesitatingly, he jumped in with a resounding plop. Suddenly, several voices rang out in unison, asking, "Who is it?" Jun Xie snorted and replied, "Me. This young master wants to take a bath, nobody is allowed to disturb me." Ah, it is the young master. After that, no more sound was heard. Within the study, Grandpa Jun wrinkled his brows. What was that? Housekeeper Pang quickly went out to check. He immediately returned and replied with a bow. It is the young master. It is reported that he jumped into the Luo Yu pond to take a bath. A bath. He jumped into Luo Yu pond in the middle of the night to take a bath. Grandpa Jun's temper began to rise again, his nose became twisted, his breath became short, he shouted with an uneven voice. This damned creature. In a huff, he went to sleep. For the past few days, he had been looking forward to his grandson turning over a new leaf. At this moment, his expectations had been shattered into a million pieces. All that remained was an unspeakable discomfort throbbing within his chest. Such is reality, the greater the hope, the greater too the disappointment will be. At this moment, Grandpa Jun really wanted to drag in the damned brat and beat his ass with a stick until its peachy flowers blossom. Then this ungrateful grandson of his will realize why the flowers are so red. Jun Xie was floating quietly upon the water surface. His body was straightened and he relied on both his hands and feet to gently stabilize himself from time to time, allowing him to float on without sinking. Jun Xie felt himself awash with a feeling of comfort. After having washed away all the thick layer of dirt on his body, Jun Xie felt as though he had just climbed out of a pit of excrement. His body was completely refreshed. The only problem was that even though his mind and soul had completely melded as one with this body, its strength is still nowhere close to where he was back in his past life. However, after having ejected so many impurities from his body, the current state of his physique, muscles and bones must certainly have improved to a shocking level. Right. Thinking about this, Jun Xie's mouth curled into a smile. A distance away, the house guards saw their young master floating on the water surface. They bulged their eyes as they stared at Jun Xie, who was floating on the water surface while remaining motionless, not sinking in the slightest. What kind of divine art is the young master practicing? To think that one can float on the water surface just like that. If one were to utilize their Xian Qi to achieve this feat, then they would require at least a minimum of jade-level Xian Qi to do so. TL. Now this is just a wild guess, but I am guessing these people do not know how to swim. After dunking himself for a while, Jun Xie quickly rose out of the pond. While his body was indeed refreshed, what follows was a feeling of weakness, an extremely exhaustive feeling of weakness. Considering how the original third young master Jun never took good care of his body, and considering the painful process of pulp-rending meridian cleanser that he just had to undergo, not fainting on the spot was quite the superhuman feat for Jun Xie. Supporting himself through sheer will, Jun Xie reached his room. After having changed into a set of white robes, the tender Lolita, little Ko brought in a bowl of bird's nest soup, her mouth set with a playful smile. No matter what world it is, strength remains the number one priority. People may be able to live without having influence, but they must never be lacking in personal strength. Even in his past life, Jun Xie had never been so impatient and desirous of enhancing his strength. Being thrown alone into this world, the only thing that could give Jun Xie peace of mind is strength. A strength so powerful, he can hold the life and death of multitudes within the palm of his hand. As of now, Jun Xie confidently believed that he had mastered another treasure, the mysterious pagoda. It remained the biggest trump card for Jun Xie in this new world. Jun Xie believed that the secrets within this unfathomably mysterious pagoda would not be limited to just a mere art of unlocking heaven's fortune. There would surely be other secrets hidden within it. As for what they may be, that will be up to Jun Xie to slowly unravel them in due time. In addition, for the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to be proclaimed as the first eternal art strengthened Jun Xie's inner conviction. This mysterious art cannot possibly be an average run-of-the-mill technique. Slowly recalling the practice methods of the first part of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, great overflowing illumination, Jun Xie sat down cross-legged on the ground. Mind and body as one, entering a tranquil state of respiration, he slowly began. The aura moves nature, the great illumination overflows, to surpass the 9 heavens, to thread upon the celestial fountain, grasp the universe, the heart becomes a treasure mountain, the divine spirit's 9 refinements, never to fall into the yellow springs. After having commenced practice following the method in his mind, he unexpectedly felt nothing at all. Not the slightest bit of qi can be felt, but this did not discourage Jun Xie at all. He started practicing again, monitoring his body at all times without letting it relax at any moment. After who knows how long, Jun Xie had already practiced following the methods inscribed upon the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to regulate his body no less than 200 times, and yet there was still no reaction. His meridians have remained inactive from the beginning to the end. Furthermore, the prolonged amount of time sitting cross-legged had caused Jun Xie's legs to become numb. Even though his body had undergone the pulp-rending meridian cleanser process, the capabilities of the body had yet to be developed. At this point, even his mind had started feeling dizzy and the signs of fainting could be perceived. Jun Xie took a deep breath one more time, trying hard to keep his mind clear, a resolute spirit emanating from his heart. I don't believe I cannot succeed in forcing out the qi. When it comes to being evil, I am number one. Who can be more evil than I, the evil monarch? This senior will succeed. This senior will never fall before other evils. But other evils must fall before the evil me. I am the evil monarch. I am the sovereign of all evils. Once again, he entered the state of respiration. After a long period of time, Jun Xie felt that his entire body would no longer obey him, his every muscle feeling strained and stiff. He had regulated his body according to the instructions of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune no less than 300 times, and yet nothing can be felt. Jun Xie closed his eyes, forcibly pushing back all the feelings of exhaustion within his body. In his mind there was only one line of thought, a stubborn conviction. One more time. One more time. One more time. More. More. Finally, after an indeterminable period of time, Jun Xie suddenly felt a slight change in his Naiwan palace within his head. After that, with a flush of heat, a little change could be felt in his meridians. But that feeling was weak and trifling, unnoticeable unless one were to constantly monitor every part of the body. While the qi flow was as thin as gossamer thread, almost to the point of it being non-existent, its essence was truly abnormal. This flow of qi was truly bewildering. For those who practice internal arts, even if they manage to practice to the point of feeling the flow of qi, it should not have condensed to become a solid existence flowing within the body. However, the current Jun Xie who had practiced to the point of stupidity was currently unable to realize this. TL. Naiwan Palace is a cultivation spot located on the head. It is one of the 3 Dantian spots. At the very moment that the abnormal flow of qi similar to gossamer thread appeared, the miniature 7-colored radiant pagoda suddenly rose up from Jun Xie's sea of consciousness. It slowly rotated in the air, exuding a huge amount of white mist with every cycle. The white mist slowly floated around, countless white threads formed by the mist, unseen by the naked eye, suddenly formed upon Jun Xie's body surface. Those threads then slowly penetrated Jun Xie's skin, all the way down to his meridians. Chapter 9, Pulp-Rending Meridian Cleanser. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 009, Pulp-Rending Meridian Cleanser. Sponsored chapter by Nader A. A big shout out to our sponsor, thank you so much for your support. At the moment, Jun Xie remained in a dazed state, neither surprise nor joy can be seen on him. He continued practicing the art, regulating his body, seemingly unaware of what had happened. This art of unlocking heaven's fortune is truly immeasurably mysterious, the most superior type of skill since time immemorial. Even if there is still a heaven, the path of cultivation has always been an act of defiance against heaven, one that puts a person's disposition to the test. As for this beginner part of this skill, it was truly difficult to practice to the extreme. Other than perseverance and indomitable will, one must also be blessed with this huge opportunity. Thus, since long ago, even if someone were to obtain the opportunity to practice this art of unlocking heaven's fortune, the chances of them succeeding were exceptionally low. Thinking about it, if the practitioner's heart was not firm, that person would likely have given up after practicing for 100 times and not see any results. This level of dullness is not something that any ordinary person could withstand. Furthermore, if a person's spirit was any weaker, it was unlikely that they would be able to endure it. From the perspective of cultivators, a freak like Jun Xie who could operate the practice routine up to thousands of times is simply one of a kind. Even if some were to possess this kind of perseverance, without a sufficiently strong spiritual awareness, they would end up suffering from Qigong deviation. As for Jun Xie, he happened to possess all the right characteristics necessary to practice the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. Jun Xie had always been an extremely unyielding type of person. Once he set his mind towards something, he will never change it. To put it in a good way, he is a man of high perseverance. To put it in a bad way, he is a brain-dead zombie. Without crashing into a wall, they'll never turn back. But Jun Xie is the monarch of all brain-dead zombies who will crash into the wall until he breaks through the wall and still not look back. Today, he who had started practicing this art of unlocking heaven's fortune can be compared with a tortoise that had gone out and bumped into a turtle. As it turns out, they are one family. Besides having the right character and mindset, Jun Xie's luck also played no small role. Obtaining the Hongjun Pagoda was the biggest blessing for Jun Xie. If he had not had the luck to obtain it, then he would have no hope of stepping upon this path. In addition, Jun Xie's soul was one that had transmigrated over, his spiritual awareness could not be weak. With the help of the Hongjun Pagoda, Jun Moi's body condition was restored while his spiritual awareness became even stronger. All these factors added up, allowing him to abruptly break through the first heavy hurdle in merely one night's time. Not only was this achievement unprecedented, it would likely become unrepeatable. The Naiwan Palace within his mind began pulsating with an even stronger force. Eventually it began following a regular pattern. As it got hotter and hotter, Jun Xie's white skin slowly became completely red. At this moment it was already the break of dawn and the sky had cleared. Jun Xie could clearly feel that the qi within his body, which was like delicate thread of silk, was becoming livelier as they gradually linked together to form a line. When the last of the threads came together in unison, completely connecting with one another, Jun Xie suddenly sensed a brilliant light coming to life before him. The light was filled with colorful and varied speckles, as though the entire world's flowers had bloomed before his eyes. The afterglow of all 7 colors revolved around him. At the same time, thunderous roars burst forth from his head, suddenly accompanied by lightning. Thunder and lightning rumbled. However, Jun Xie's eyes remained closed. This meant that all these were occurring within his sense of awareness. This was the first hurdle of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. Calm heart. Even though Jun Xie could clearly see this strange atmosphere, he also firmly remembered that when he began practicing, he had closed his eyes. This imagery was something he should not be able to see, and yet he was able to. What could this mean? This meant that everything before him was nothing more but an illusion. With that in mind, Jun Xie chose to ignore it, continuing with his exercise, his face was a mask of indifference. Boom! Akin to a bomb, an explosion erupted within Jun Xie's sea of consciousness. Jun Xie's body suddenly convulsed, feeling as though his body had lost something that was once part of it. His spirit swayed about, and then he abruptly spat out a mouthful of blood far away. He then fainted. These mouthful of blood fell onto the white sheets on the bed, but strangely a black color emerged from it, seemingly a solid substance. Unexpectedly, it did not flow down, and seemed just like a piece of dark charcoal. Jun Xie's body fell onto the ground, his body twitching unconsciously. Once again, a dark liquid was slowly forced out from the pores of his skin, slowly rendering Jun Xie's light-colored robe wet, bit by bit, becoming black in color. This was the true result of the pulp-rending meridian cleanser. Previously, when his body had discharged out a layer of filth, those were only the impurities within the skin and muscles at most. At the present moment, what he was forcing out of his body are the impurities within the skeletal frame and his inner organs. As for the blood that Jun Xie had spat out, those are the impurities within the 5 organs, the most difficult of all the human body parts to cleanse. Jun Xie's present situation, from the perspective of those who cultivate the way of the Tao, would be none other than the shedding process. That is to say, from now on, he had escaped from the shackles of worldly possessions and desire. He had officially entered the path of cultivation. For those who practice in the way, reaching the shedding stage would be preceded by a rather painful and lengthy experience. There are those who spent months, years or even decades in order to reach this realm. Some even spent their entire lives in vain and failed to reach this stage. And yet, Jun Xie achieved it in the span of one night. This was truly a miracle amongst miracles. If this news were to spread, it is likely that none of the ascetics would believe it. Obviously, this was not because Jun Xie's body is special, or was it due to Jun Xie's high level of spiritual power. The reason lies elsewhere, and that was none other than the white mist. The white mist was the most important factor, as it is the purest form of spiritual qi from heaven and earth. However, Jun Xie had yet to realize this. In his past life, Jun Xie was a martial arts expert, but had never come across the realm of cultivation. From his viewpoint, all these so-called cultivation in order to achieve immortality was nothing more than a nonsensical subject. As such, even if he were to realize what had happened to his body, the only thing he would think of was that he had an unbelievably huge stroke of luck. When Jun Xie woke up, he found himself within a large barrel filled with warm water encompassing his body. There were also 2 little soft hands working hard, scrubbing his body. Opening his eyes, he saw the young maid, little Ku. Her head was wet from perspiration and her face red from the heat. Her small hands were holding onto a piece of soft towel, she panted as she cleaned his body with it. Her tiny lips were pursed up tightly, her face filled with an expression of embarrassment, almost to the point of near crying. Her pair of pretty eyes were deliberately directed upwards, only glancing down for a moment when there was a need to scrub a different area. After that, she would move her eyes away again. This little girl's shy expression is simply too cute. Thinking about this, Jun Xie's thoughts suddenly returned back towards himself as he realized that he was actually bare naked. Unable to stop his own feeling of embarrassment, he gave 2 dry coughs and said, "I'll do it myself." After having said that, he reached out for the towel in little Ku's hands. Giving a surprised yelp, little Ku ran far away while clutching the towel. She trembled as she looked at Jun Xie, her eyes were filled with a sense of panic. "Young Jiang. Master, you're awake." Jun Xie gave a helpless sigh and replied. "If I am not awake, then are you talking to a ghost now?" "Ghost? Ah!" Little Ku let out another scream. This time Jun Xie suddenly realized that he could clearly see the minute little hairs on her face standing up, her face becoming deathly white as though she had really seen a ghost. Jun Xie found himself sighing again. Stop screaming. Even if there is a ghost, their face is probably not as scary as yours. Your performance is truly applaud-worthy. Bang! The doors of the residence burst open with a bang and a stalwart figure walked inside, taking huge strides each time. Moxie, you're awake. What happened? It was none other than Grandpa June. Behind him were several bodyguards. Grandpa June's voice was filled with anger. He had just finished giving a thunderous lecture to those 36 bodyguards assigned to protect June Xie. What happened yesterday could be considered an unexpected accident, but how could he have guessed that it would happen again today? Grandpa June's temper was wholly incited to the point of detonation. What? Do my June family look easy to you guys? Do you think you can bully us so easily? It seems this senior will have to show some of my might about. If everyone decides to target my grandson, then how are we going to spend the rest of our days? Grandpa June had assumed that June Xie's fainting was due to an assassination attempt. Chapter 10, Grandpa June Raises a Storm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 010 Grandpa June Raises a Storm. Grandpa June naturally would not have guessed that last night's incident was in fact a huge heavenly blessing for his grandson. There was no assassins at all. And yet he managed to somehow connect these two unrelated dots together. After hearing that June Xie had jumped into the Luo Yu pond to take a bath, he went to sleep with a heart filled with anger and resentment. Unexpectedly, while he was sleeping soundly, he suddenly woke up with a start, his heart filled with inexplicable fear. Asking around, he received news that there was a problem with June Xie, causing his anger to ignite. I'm all right, all good, I am really all good here. June Xie subconsciously grabbed a towel to cover his crotch, his face filled with embarrassment. He who had been stripped naked without anything left to cover himself had to suddenly face tens of elderly men who came charging in, his body left vulnerable to all eyes. Even though June Xie has a very thick skin and a calm state of mind, he was still somewhat unable to accept this. What are you trying to cover up? Do you need to be so ashamed to show that thing to your grandfather? I still remember back when you were still a baby, I would often carry you with one hand, while the other hand would play around with that thing. June Zhantian's words almost caused June Xie to choke to death. At the back, the bodyguards' shoulders relaxed, everyone's face turning red as they restrained themselves, breathing heavily. Several of them stole side glimpses towards the area that the young master had covered. Some of them started glancing at one another, their eyes winking and signaling at one another, almost as if they were comparing something. Who was it? June Zhantian's face fell, turning as cold as ice, his killing intent unleashed. Ha! June Xie was confused, but quickly came to understand what Grandpa June meant. He then made a face full of shame and lowered his head. I fell before I could see anything. You wastrel! Grandpa June swore, his voice filled with disappointment. After taking another close look at his own grandson to ensure that he was indeed all right, he no longer had any mood to continue looking at his naked body. With this small physique, his grandson simply does not look like a grandson from a military family. Not even a young lady's skin can be compared with him in terms of whiteness. Humph. This truly is. He reluctantly nodded. You go have a good rest, then. After that, he turned and headed out, followed by the bodyguards. It was only after that could June Xie give out a sigh of relief, putting away the towel covering his bottom area, a cold sweat trickled down. The next day, the old duke, June Zhantian, let loose his temper within the Golden Imperial Hall. Pointing at several lords, ministers, imperial relatives and even the chief chancellor, he unleashed a barrage of curses. Having had his emotions agitated to an abnormal high, he threatened that if anyone were to attempt to assassinate his only grandson again, then every family will have to give out one life as compensation. Having stayed quietly for the past few years, June Zhantian's eruption of anger rendered the entire royal court, both civil and military faction, trembling in silence. Even the emperor himself had to repeatedly comfort him in person. But there were also those who were insensitive. The eldest prince's old supporter, the royal doctor, Song Shi, was a newly promoted noble. He was able to climb to his current position with the help of the eldest prince's influence, but did not have much knowledge about this old duke. Counting on the backing of the eldest prince, he contradicted Jun Zhantian's words and tried to get the emperor to support him. He was thrashed on the spot by Jun Zhantian to the point where his face became a pig's, also losing 2 teeth. The eldest prince steeled himself and came forth to persuade Jun Zhantian, but was granted a kick to his stomach, causing him to roll backwards on the floor. After that incident, everyone became fearful, not a single one dared to move. In the end, the emperor had to personally come forth to pacify him, smoothing things over and promising him that he would personally guarantee the safety of third young Master Jun. Only then was Jun Zhantian willing to leave with a face filled with indignation. Just before he left, he stared at each and every one of the prince's supporters, causing their legs to turn unsteady like noodles. This old duke had been staying his hand for a good 10 years. After 10 years, he finally threw a fit, scaring the absolute crap out of every civil and military officials of the royal court. Within the Golden Imperial Hall, he even dared to strike the prince. What else would he not do? His Majesty, the Emperor, observed Jun Zhantian as he marched off, and was the only one to give out a deep sigh from the bottom of his heart. The prestige and might that Jun Zhantian showed today was truly imposing, but the emperor knew all too well that the third young master, who was the only successor of the Jun family, had thoroughly disappointed this old general. Thinking back on when Jun Zhantian had personally come to him, requesting a marriage for Jun Moxi and Princess Ling Meng, that was probably Jun Zhantian's final effort to preserve the Jun bloodline. However, His Majesty had mercilessly rejected the request. As long as Jun Moxi was still breathing, Jun Zhantian would never throw such a huge fit in the Golden Imperial Hall. The reason he went out of control today was due to the fact that he could no longer see any future for the Jun family. The Jun family's enemies both within and without are incalculable. Once Jun Zhantian dies, his enemies would never show any mercy towards his grandson. This was the reason why the old duke had no qualms about going all out. Whoever dares to harm my Jun family, my grandson, I'll harm you first. Since my Jun family had already been forced to such straits, what else is there to fear? The Jun family was once the awe-inspiring patron saint of the Tianxiang kingdom. Could it be that they will simply decline into oblivion like this? The emperor sighed, a pang of regret throbbed in his heart. Perhaps back then. After having experienced the might of the old duke, the military officials were all enraptured, while those who had made secret plans for the old duke immediately decided to drop those plans. Even the eldest prince, who had suffered a huge loss in face, did not show any grievances. At the end of the day, he would only blame that old supporter of his. Ignorant and disgraceful, did he not notice that this old duke had gone half mad? Of course, there were still many of them who held on to their grievances within their hearts. You old thing, you think you can continue living forever. The day you die is the day the Jun family become extinct. However, this was something that they can only think about deep within their hearts. There are no powers amongst them within the Tianxiang kingdom with the courage to blatantly confront the old duke. Only the royal preceptor, Chief Chancellor Li Shang, had been staying seated without saying a single word, but once Grandpa Jun left, his eyebrows was secretly raised, his face shaped into a smile. It seemed that Jun Zhantian was quite protective of this disappointment of a grandson. In that case, then Jun Moxi was Jun Zhantian's weakness. Such a kind of weakness is simply too easy to grasp. When a person's weak point is revealed, then no matter how strong that person may be, or how much background that person may have, they are no longer worth fearing. Staying at a corner without being noticed by anyone, the palace army captain, Meng Rufei, who was standing opposite Preceptor Li, looked at each other, their faces showing a mysterious smile. Jun family, Jun Xie's room. The doors were closed. Little Ku's face was blushed red, as she obviously wanted to escape. Are you scared of me? Jun Xie wiped his body. Since this little girl had already seen his naked body before, seeing a little more makes no difference. Since this girl does not seem to care, why should he? Scared, little Ku nodded her head immediately. But she then thought about it and quickly said. No, not. Scared. Jun Xie laughed before standing up, getting out of the bathtub. Naked. Little Ku screamed again, covering her eyes. Jun Xie quickly put on his clothes before going in front of little Ku, smiling. You can open your eyes now, it is all right now. Little Ku slowly opened a small crack between her fingers, secretly peering from the hole. After realizing that Jun Xie had truly gotten clothed, she was able to set her mind at ease and put her hands down. Her face was still of a reddish hue, truly lovely. Seeing how cute she was, Jun Xie could not stop himself from reaching out and gently patting her on the head. Little Ku was surprised. She raised her head and found that Jun Xie's eyes were filled with warmth, akin to that of a big brother seeing his little sister. Not knowing why, her heart calmed down, no longer feeling fearful. She thought. Right now, the young master actually looks pleasing to the eye. After having these thoughts, she was suddenly startled. How can I even think that? He is obviously still the lascivious, debaucherous and detestful baddie. I will not allow him to defile my innocence. If he uses force, then I'll just die. She could not help but took a step backwards, her face becoming completely alert.